Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In part 1 of this video, I showed you how I built this floating desk for my workspace. If you haven't checked that out yet, please do. The link should pop up on the top right and will also be in the description below. In this part, I wanted to show you a couple of elements I added to this desk and how I had set this desk up for use. To start off with, since this was a pretty bare bones floating desk setup, I needed to think of some storage space. And so, I started off with a floating shelf above the workspace. Since in my last video, I wasn't able to cover the part where we wrapped the desk, I decided to capture that process while I wrapped this shelf. I got a scrap piece of plywood from one of my other projects that was almost the perfect size for the shelf. I am using the same wrap as the one I've used for the desk to maintain the consistency. Since I plan to wrap the entire shelf, I am placing each lengthwise edge of the shelf on the wrap and drawing lines to get a more accurate size and fit for it. Once I have the measurements down, I leave a bit of extra space on either side so that I can trim it down later if needed and cut the piece of wrap out. The application process is very simple and straightforward, but it requires a certain amount of finesse. There is no hard and fast way of doing this. Here you can see, first I try to get an impression of the edge by rubbing it over the wrap. My suggestion would be to just peel a small portion of the wrap and anchor it to one of the edges in the right orientation based on the impressions you made earlier on the edge. Once you are sure of a proper fit, the best way to go ahead would be to get your hand underneath the wrap and grab the adhesive peel off from the underside and slowly peel it off with one hand while using the other hand to smooth out the surface and apply the wrap evenly. Just ensure that the wrap doesn't get stuck to the work surface while applying it. Once you flip it over, now comes the tricky part, which is applying the wrap, usually by bending it over the sides and then the corners. As you can see, I didn't get a perfectly straight fit, but I don't mind because the wood grain design will mostly mask this. Start by slowly working your way over the sides. This will take a few attempts if you don't have prior experience. Don't worry about the adhesive. It is strong enough. And also, since this is going to be a shelf, there is not going to be a lot of wear and tear on it, so the wrap will hold even after a few attempts of peeling it off and sticking it firmly. Based on my experience, you get the best results when you pull outward on each edge to ensure a tight fit as possible. Work on only a small part of the edge at all times. On a side note, it will be very helpful if you have a blow dryer or a heat gun next to you. The heat will really help iron out these creases and bubbles that form during the application process. For the corners, the best way that worked for me is to cut a rectangle off the corners so that the wrap doesn't overlap in the corners. If done right, you will end up with two pieces, one lengthwise and one breadthwise in the corner that you can fold down on its respective edge. And with that, we have our floating shelf wrapped and ready. And it's time to get the hardware to mount the shelf onto the wall. We start by drawing a line on the wall approximately where we want our shelf to be with a level. Then place the bracket on the wall to determine where you want to drill the holes. The installation process is exactly the same as what we did for the table. Drill the holes and then tap in the wall anchors after ensuring that they have a snug fit. We will be using 1-inch screws to fasten the brackets to the wall. Once the anchors are in, line the holes on the bracket with the holes of the wall anchors and drive the 1-inch screws into them to secure the bracket in place. I've set up the wall brackets to be 4 inches inset from the edge of the shelves to allow for a little overhang. Now similarly, I'll secure the other bracket parallel to it and fasten the shelf on top of it. With that, here's some B-roll. Next, I decided to make another shelf that's going to rest sort of like a platform on my desk. So I got another piece of plywood and a different wrap that I thought would give a bit more contrast to the build. I also managed to find these stainless steel legs with rubber feet from my local hardware store. They're about 4 inches in height and would suit my need perfectly. I also feel these looked very classic for the build. I did not wrap the underside of this platform as it's not going to be visible. Now here's a quick time lapse of me marking where the holes for these legs need to be. Always make sure you drill a pilot hole before inserting a screw, especially in cases like this where you are very close to the edge of the plywood. If you don't do this, there's a high chance that the plywood might split or crack at the edges. Once all the pilot holes were drilled, I used half-inch screws to secure the legs in place. Here's how it looked. One more thing I wanted to add to this setup was a desk mat or an organizer to ensure that it's easy to maintain the white surface in the long run. I got this Tukzer Desk Mat from Amazon. It came rolled up with some below average packaging, but the mat itself was pretty big with stitched edges, and it was made up of an anti-slip material which had very good quality. They had a few designs to choose from, but I went with one that had some nice symmetric shapes and popping colors to enhance the overall look of the workspace. I'll leave a link to these in the description below if you want to get one for yourself. Here's the last but most important addition to the setup in the words of my mother. With that, my work desk is complete. This was a very simple but efficient and satisfying project to do. The entire build, including the desk, took me exactly 2 days to complete. It would make for an amazing weekend project. Here's a picture of my work desk with everything hooked up and being used for my office work. What do you guys think of this build? Leave your thoughts and questions in the comments below. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel if you like the content I post, which would greatly motivate me to come up with more builds like this. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and keep building.